The white dog of Guadalupe. When I lived in the northern part of Mexico City, I worked as an English teacher. I had this little routine every morning. Wake up at 5:30, grab some instant coffee, and head out the door by 6. The street I walked down wasn't glamorous, just a cracked sidewalk, half-faded paint on the houses, and traffic already buzzing awake. But there was this one spot, a crossroad with a statue of the Virgin of Guadalupe, set up on a concrete pedestal. People would sometimes leave flowers or candles there. That corner had its own rhythm, and part of it was this white dog. Every single morning, right at 6 o'clock, I'd see it there. Not fancy, not scruffy either. Just an ordinary street dog with this almost glowing white coat. It never barked, never begged, never even looked at me too long. We just passed each other like it was part of the schedule. And honestly, after a few weeks, it felt weirdly comforting. Like the city itself had a heartbeat, and the dog was proof of it. One morning, though, the rhythm broke. I was running a couple minutes late, walking fast so I wouldn't miss the bus, when I noticed the dog wasn't crossing the street. Normally, I'd see it trotting over from the opposite curb, like clockwork. But this time, it just stood still, staring across. I slowed down without even realizing. And then it happened. Out of nowhere, a motorbike lost control. Tires screeched, metal clanged, and it slid right across the intersection. If I hadn't hesitated, if I'd walked at my usual pace, it would have taken me out. Instead, the bike slammed into the side curb, and I just stood there frozen, my heart racing, watching the rider crawl up cursing in Spanish. When I finally made it to school, I couldn't shake it. That evening, I told one of the older women who ran the corner store near my apartment. She listened, nodded, and just said, "That dog has saved many people." Like it was a known thing. No drama, no shock, just a fact, like saying the sky is blue. The next morning I left at 6 again, half expecting to see the dog. I checked the corner. The statue was there, candles flickering from someone's prayer. But the white dog? Gone. I never saw it again after that. Sometimes I wonder if it was really just a street dog, or something people in the neighborhood quietly understood better than I did. I mean, you don't need to believe in miracles to admit the timing was too perfect. And honestly, even now, whenever I cross a quiet intersection in the early morning, I catch myself looking for that white shape waiting for me. The Cornfield Lullaby. When I signed up for a volunteer program in southern Mexico, I figured the weirdest thing I'd deal with would be food poisoning or the occasional tarantula in the bathroom. Instead, I ended up in this tiny farming village in Chiapas, way up in the hills, surrounded by cornfields that seemed to go on forever. The village itself was small. Dusty streets, houses made from cinder blocks and wood, and one little store that sold everything from soap to soda in glass bottles. Most nights were quiet. The kind of quiet you don't get in the US. Even the dogs gave up barking after sunset. That silence made what happened stand out even more. The first time I heard it, I thought I was imagining things. I was lying in bed under my mosquito net, trying to fall asleep, when this soft singing drifted in through the window. It wasn't Spanish, at least not the kind I was learning in school. Later, someone told me it was Nahuatl, an indigenous language still spoken in parts of Mexico. The melody was slow, almost hypnotic, the kind of tune you'd expect a mom to hum while rocking a baby. It gave me chills, but not in a horror movie way. More like, it felt wrong that it was happening out there, in the middle of the fields, at night, when no one should have been around. The next day, I asked one of the older women in the village about it. She laughed, waved her hand, and said, "I must have dreamed it." Nobody else seemed to know what I was talking about, or maybe they just didn't want to. But that night, there it was again. Same melody, same distant voice. This time I sat up in bed and listened hard, trying to figure out which direction it was coming from. Somewhere past the last row of houses, maybe from the cornfields. By the third night, I decided to record it. I set my phone on the windowsill, voice memo app open, waiting. And just like before, the singing floated in, soft and steady. But the second I hit record, it stopped. Like someone had cut the sound off with a knife. When I finally worked up the nerve to walk toward the fields with a flashlight, I didn't see anyone. The singing never came back while I was out there, but in the dirt between the rows of corn, I found these tiny footprints, bare feet, way too small for any adult, and no kids were supposed to be out that late. Later, one of the younger guys in the village pulled me aside. He spoke quietly, almost like he didn't want anyone else to hear. He told me that long ago, there used to be rituals, old ways, he called them. Families who lost children would return them to the earth, planting them like seeds in the cornfields. And to do that, they sang. Always at night, always the same lullaby. I wanted to laugh it off, but the thing is, he wasn't joking. His eyes stayed fixed on the ground, like he regretted saying anything at all. The following nights, the lullaby kept coming back. Sometimes closer, sometimes farther, but always just out of reach. I tried recording it again and again, but every time I hit that red button, silence. And every morning, if I bothered to check, I'd find those same little footprints pressed into the soil. By the time I left the village, I'd stopped asking questions. People either didn't know or didn't want to talk. And me? I wasn't sure I wanted the answer anymore. But even now, when I think about Chiapas, I don't remember the food or the heat or the long bus rides. I remember lying awake at night, listening to a song in a language I couldn't understand, drifting out from a cornfield where no one was supposed to be. And I still wonder, was it meant to comfort or was it meant to call something back? The Promise at the Candelaria. When I was studying abroad in Oaxaca, I ended up staying with a local family who treated me less like a guest and more like some long-lost cousin. Their house was colorful in that way. Mexican homes often are. Bright walls, flowers in little pots, and a kitchen that always smelled like tortillas on the stove. One night, while I was helping dry dishes, I noticed this small setup in the corner of their living room. It wasn't just a photo frame or decoration. It was a little altar with candles, flowers, and pictures of people I didn't recognize. They called it a Candelaria. Basically, think of it as a tiny home shrine where families keep the memory of their loved ones alive. Kind of like a photo wall mixed with a daily ritual spot. I must have looked curious, because the mom explained, someone has to talk to them every day, or they get upset. She said it with this half-serious, half-teasing tone, like she wasn't trying to scare me, but also wasn't joking entirely. So, for the next couple of weeks, I started saying goodnight to the Candelaria before bed. Not a big thing. Just a soft, buenas noches, like I was talking to a roommate. At first I did it as a joke, but it turned into this little habit, almost comforting. Time passed, and suddenly my return flight was just days away. The night before I left, I walked past the altar on my way to the kitchen, and froze. There, propped up between the candles and paper flowers, was a tiny paper figure. Someone had made it by hand, with little scissors marks on the edges. And the face? It was me. My face. Clumsy, but clearly drawn from one of the selfies I'd shown the kids. I asked the dad about it the next morning. He frowned, shook his head, and said nobody in the house had put it there. The kids swore it wasn't them. Even the grandmother, who usually smiled at everything, looked a little unsettled. Finally, the mom just gave this calm shrug and said, "Maybe it was them. Maybe our ancestors didn't want to forget you." I didn't know how to respond. I mean, it's not every day someone tells you a piece of paper with your face on it might be a message from the dead. When I packed my bag that night, I couldn't decide whether to take the little paper figure with me or leave it. In the end, I set it back on the Candelaria. If it really was a promise, I figured it wasn't mine to break. Even now, back home, I sometimes catch myself whispering a quick "Buenas noches" before bed, like they're still listening somehow. The Skull Market. I was in Oaxaca for Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead, and like every other tourist, I was wandering the local markets looking for souvenirs. These markets were wild, stalls stacked with sugar skulls, marigolds, candles, little skeleton figurines, dressed like brides and grooms. It was like Halloween, and a family reunion rolled into one, but with way more heart behind it. Toward the back of one market, though, I ducked into this stall that felt different, darker, quieter. Instead of the colorful, cartoony skulls I'd been seeing everywhere, the shelves here had these bone-white heads lined up. Not candy, not plastic, just skulls. Or at least, that's what they looked like. One in particular caught my eye. It wasn't shiny or decorated. It just sat there on a little wooden stand, staring back with empty sockets. It was so realistic, I got a chill. The shopkeeper, this older guy with a face like weathered leather, noticed me staring. He said almost casually, "That one's for the forgotten dead." His Spanish was simple enough for me to catch, and he added in broken English, "Not remembered. No family. This is for them." I laughed nervously, like it was just a creepy sales pitch. Still, I bought it. Don't ask me why. Maybe I thought it would make a cool story to tell back home, or maybe I just didn't want to look like I was scared. When I flew back to the States, I set it on a shelf in my apartment. It looked strange there, sitting between a stack of books and a fake plant. I told myself it was harmless, but that's when the noises started. At first, it was just little things. A shuffle, like someone moving in the next room. Then, night after night, I heard it, someone clearing their throat. Not a cough, a deliberate throat clearing, the kind people do when they're waiting to be acknowledged. I tried ignoring it. I even moved the skull into a box in the closet. Didn't help. The sound followed me, like the thing wanted attention. Finally, I decided to get rid of it. I went back to Oaxaca the next year, figuring I'd return it. But when I found the market again and asked around, nobody knew the shop I was talking about. One vendor shook his head and said, "That stall? It only opens on the night of the dead. After, it's gone. So now the skull is back in my closet. I don't hear the throat clearing as often anymore. But every once in a while, late at night, I'll catch it. Just a little sound in the dark, like someone reminding me they're still here, waiting not to be forgotten." Next is Sana Muerte. When I first started dating a girl from Mexico City, I thought the biggest cultural difference I'd have to deal with was my lousy Spanish. But the first time she invited me to stay at her place, I realized there were other things. Her bedroom was cozy enough, small with posters on the wall and string lights over the bed. But in the corner, on a low table, was this little shrine. Candles, a glass of water, some trinkets, and right in the middle, a figure draped in black robes, holding a scythe. If you've never heard of it, that's Santa Muerte, Saint Death. People build altars to her, like they would to saints or ancestors. But she's not recognized by the church. And honestly, the whole vibe is heavy. Think of it like a sacred figure people pray to for protection, luck, or even revenge, depending on who's asking. The second I noticed it, my girlfriend said, "Dead serious. Don't talk to it. Don't ask it for anything. Ever." I nodded, like, sure, no problem. But later that night, lying in her bed, I couldn't stop glancing at that corner. The candles weren't lit, yet it felt like the room had a shadow that didn't belong. At some point after midnight, I woke up, or maybe I never fully slept. I had that frozen feeling where you know your eyes are open, but the world looks dreamlike. My body felt like ice, every hair standing up, and I couldn't move. Then, right next to my ear, a voice whispered. Not loud, not threatening, just casual. No wish? Nothing you want? I squeezed my eyes shut, like a kid hiding under the covers. I must have blacked out, because the next thing I knew, I was gasping for air, actually able to move again. When I sat up, there was something on the blanket. Tiny black crumbs, scattered like ashes. Candle wax, burnt and brittle. Except none of the candles in the room had been lit. The next morning, I told her, I expected her to laugh it off, maybe blame it on me dreaming. Instead, her face went cold. She shook her head and said, "Ignore it. Forget it." That was it. No explanation, no comfort. Just those words. And the altar. It stayed in the corner, same as before, like it had never moved, like nothing had happened. But after that night, I learned to keep my eyes on the ceiling until I fell asleep. Because if I glanced at that corner, it always felt like something was waiting for me to answer,